Thank you very much. I'm very excited to be here today, especially because Ada Lovelace Day is also my birthday. So I'm going to talk to you today about how microbes disperse. And really a better title for my talk would have been The Incredible Flying Spores. So these are pictures of microscopic fungal spores that I have captured in the air. Now, when I tell people that I work on flying spores, they start to get a little green in the face. So I want to explain that I don't work on disease. I work mainly on microbes that are beneficial in the environment. And I want to back up a little bit and explain how I started studying these beneficial microbes. So 20 years ago, I worked on endangered species conservation in California. Wasn't I so cute back then? So we wanted to know how to preserve and help endangered species like this bird. This is a California gnatcatcher. It's an imperiled bird federally and in the state. And one of the challenges that we faced was how to create ecosystems for endangered species out of disturbed lands. It's incredibly complicated. It's not like making a garden that you can tend to. You have to create a self-sustaining ecosystem. And there are a lot of different complex interactions that we don't understand. And one of the barriers that we kept facing was we don't understand very much about how plants interact with microorganisms in the soil and in general in the environment. And so that was when I decided I needed to become a scientist to understand how microorganisms interact with plants so that we can restore ecosystems and get the cute furry animals back into our environment. Okay, in the last 20 years, we have learned an amazing amount of information about the plant microbiome. So you probably know about the human microbiome, right? Raise your hand if you've heard about the human microbiome. So the diverse community of organisms that live on us and in us, and they affect our health. Well, plants are the same. They have bacteria and fungi that live on their tissue and inside their tissue, and it affects plant productivity. It affects plant health. Now, one of the most common groups of organisms that live inside plants are fungi that live inside the roots of plants. And you can't see them. They're incredibly common, and they're below our feet all the time when we're walking around in the forest or in meadows. And they're called mycorrhizal fungi. Now, if mycorrhizae is a scary word because it has a Z and 2 R's. Just imagine helper fungi. So these fungi live inside plant roots. If you were to take a root and stain it blue, you would see those little balloons. Those are fungi, and they're living inside plant roots, and they're not harming the plant. They're in fact helping the plant. So everything that you know about fungi as being associated with death and decomposition, you can just throw that out, because most of the fungi that are living in soils and ecosystems, they're actually benefiting plants and benefiting ecosystems. So what do? The fungi, they take up nutrients from the soil, minerals from the soil, and they give it to the plant. And in exchange, the plant creates sugars through photosynthesis and gives it to the fungus. It's one of the most common symbioses on Earth and in terrestrial ecosystems. All right, so what about when it comes to restoring ecosystems? We know that degradations like mining, like intensive agriculture, like deforestation, like overgrazing, we know that these activities harm mycorrhizal fungi. So when we want to restore ecosystems, how do we get the fungi back? Now we're getting into how do microbes move. Okay, so we need to understand a little bit about how microbes move. So when I was doing my PhD, I thought, okay, well, let's go back to what the experts know about how microbes move? Well, for about almost 100 years, the dominant paradigm in microbial ecology has been the Boas-Becking hypothesis, which says everything is everywhere, but the environment selects, which means essentially microbial dispersal is unlimited. Microbes can go anywhere, but the local environment determines which microbial species you find in a given location. Okay, well, if microbes are unlimited in their dispersal, there shouldn't be any problem with that. But that's not what we were seeing when it came to restoring ecosystems. Now, the fungi that I work on, these mycorrhizal fungi, they don't form mushrooms. They live entirely below ground. So some of them were moving into degraded systems, some of them were not. How are they moving? And how were some moving and how were some not? We just really didn't know. We didn't understand the mechanisms of how they were spreading. So this was when we thought, okay, now it's time to look for the incredible flying spores. Okay, so what do? We put dust collectors on skyscrapers. Seems kind of simple, but this is what we do in my lab. So we have dust collectors. This is, you can see kind of the beautiful Chicago skyline in the background. We have these dust collectors, and spores fly in, and we collect them. We measure their traits, and then we can use cool genomic sequencing techniques to track which fungal species we have and compare them to global databases as well. And I had to put up a picture of my awesome research assistants and students because, as we heard at the beginning of the night, mentors and mentees are really the heart of science these days, and I couldn't do any of this without them. I essentially just walk into the lab now and say, how do I turn the machines on? And they help me do it all. Okay, so what do we find? We find that not everything is everywhere. This is just my one data slide. Over the course of the year, we see so many fungal spores in the air, and this is such a surprise. We see thousands, tens of thousands, and it's not the same species, and they shift throughout the year. We see this peak in the fall, and we're like, why are we seeing this peak in the fall? And then certain species peak in different months. Some like to come out in August, some like to come out in July. Why is that? But these questions are helping us develop some new theories about how microbes disperse and what's causing these fungi that don't form mushrooms to get into the air. And really, the dominant hypothesis now is that it's human disturbances that are creating mechanisms that lift these spores into the air. Now, we know that humans are creating disturbances all over the world, whether it's through agriculture or grazing or construction or urbanization, and those could be ways that humans are aiding the movement of microbes globally. Now, wind and aerial movement is just one way. Birds certainly move these fungi around and other microbes. Small mammals, we know, can move them around too. But there are lots of different mechanisms to be explored. So I just wanted to leave you with two take-home messages. The first is, as soon as people learn about mycorrhizal fungi, helper fungi, the first thing they want to know is, how do I buy some of this and put it in my garden? And I want to just give you a word of caution, because very rarely are the answers to our environmental problems able to be purchased and available in a box. And we need to learn a little bit more about which microbes can move on their own, which microbes are beneficial to ecosystems, and maybe learn a little bit from the medical doctors about how we can first do no harm and prevent disturbance of the existing local native fungi first. And the last point I wanted to lead you with is, it's an exciting time to be a microbial ecologist. There are so many cool tools that we can use between DNA sequencing techniques, ecological measurements with remote sensing, big data that we're all bringing together right now to solve a lot of environmental problems. Thank you.